Hello, my name is Renee L. Rose. I'm the founder of Explore Art Talk. With Explore Art, our featured guests, we have meaningful conversations celebrating artistic and cultural diversity that makes our world extraordinary. So sit back, relax, and check out our content. Thank you for joining us today.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The sun's shining and all is good.
Well, I live in Chicago, and we're in
Yeah.
Chicago, and the sun's not shining, but the weather's been unseasonably warm. Yesterday, for February, it was 73 degrees.
Wow.
That's unheard of.
But you know you're not going to put away the sweaters quite yet, right?
Well, we've had a very mild winter. No, I'm not
Yeah.
putting sweaters away, but it looks like we're going to have, it's been like in the 50s and 40s.
Nice.
It's usually like 0 degrees, at this.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. Couldn't be better. Chicago in the springtime must be nice.
Have you ever been to Chicago?
No, I haven't. It's on my list though. My brother was there not too long ago and he said he absolutely loved it.
Oh, wow. You have to come.
Yeah.
You would absolutely love it.
Well, it's one of the great cities of the United States, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, you probably think it's the best.
Yes, no, I don't. Actually, I love New York. I was born here. I love Chicago. I think the skyline and it's really beautiful. But I love New York because of the diversity. And you
Yeah,
can
it's a great city,
all around
obviously.
the world. Yeah. Chicago.
I've been to New York.
You have?
Yeah,
And
absolutely loved it.
yeah, because you love art. So this, oh God.
Oh, it's just incredible.
Yes.
Out in the sticks where I am.
Oh, you are?
Well, I'm in Vancouver. It's a big city, but we don't have those great world-class museums that cities like New York have.
I've been to Vancouver. It's a very clean, very nice city. It was over 10 years ago, but I really love Vancouver.
Oh, nice. Glad you had a good time.
So how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Tycho?
Yes, you got it. First time.
Wow. Well, thank you.
I've been called everything under the sun, but you got it first time.
It's different. I've
been Tycho, Tycho.
Do you have Japanese in your family or something?
No, it's kind of weird. It's we did a genealogical kind of study or research on it, and it turns out that I have an ancestor who changed his name to Tycho. So
wow.
he was Swedish, and his name was Persson, which is a really common name in Sweden. But so the genealogist said he doesn't know why. Maybe the cops were chasing him or something. But anyway, that was in the early 1800s, I think. So ever since then, we've been Tychos, and we really don't know why.
Well, at least you checked to find out. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a really nice name.
Thank you.
So,
so is Renee, by the way. I love Renee. That's a beautiful name.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't you start off? You have such an interesting background. I'm trying to figure out where to start, but why don't you start off and tell me how you became an artist? Is it something you did as a child, or tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was always interested. I don't know, my mom gave me crayons when I was a little kid and lots of paper, and I had an older brother who was really good at drawing. And I always admired his drawing so much, and I always sort of aspired to be as good as him. He was excellent, like a really good illustrator at a really young age. So I learned a few chops from him when I was a kid, and just always took art classes in school. My mom was sort of an amateur painter. She took painting lessons and she did watercolors, and so she kind of encouraged that. And some of my brothers played music. I did art. My sister did a lot of sort of craft type stuff. And that was always encouraged. And then at the age of 17 or 18, I decided to go to college. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? I love sports too. But I just wasn't good enough to pursue anything in sports. I love doing it, but I just didn't have the talent or the ability. So I thought, well, what about art? may as
Okay.
well do that. And then I was just very fortunate. I had some great teachers in college, um, and they really lit me on fire. And they were great artists unto themselves, but they were also great motivators. And they were just so passionate and so in love with art and really believed in art and the importance of art. And that just bled into the entire class. And we were all on fire. Those were great classes and great times. That's back in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm an old guy.
Me
And
too.
so, and then after graduating, I thought, well, what am I going to do with my life? And I thought, well, I'm just going to try to be an artist and see where that takes me. And
Okay.
so I just continued to paint after graduating. And of course, as an artist, you end up doing all kinds of jobs. I was a waiter. I moved furniture. You know, I did everything under the sun. I delivered pop, like a soda pop truck,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
delivering to all the little corner stores, and just I worked in a bowling alley. I painted houses, did
It
whatever I had to do.
passionate to stay into your art.
Yeah, exactly. So just try to make a living, just try to earn enough to live, and try to find a job that's flexible enough that you can work on your art. So I did that for years, and eventually I started teaching, um, and I became a high school art teacher, and lasted about 3 years, and
Didn't
then I
like
just
that, huh?
yeah, I did like it, but just the institutional nature,
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork
Yeah.
involved in that kind of thing. And I just, at administration, it seemed like administration was more important than the subjects, and grades and all that kind of stuff. So it just wasn't for me. So I ended up quitting that and moving on. And I got a part-time teaching job in a college. And that's what I did for a very long time. And then eventually I was able to quit my teaching job because I was becoming better known and was able to sell work and eventually was able to make a living from it.
I see that you went to Asia. So you
Yes, I did.
right after, oh, talk to me all about that. You did that right after school, you graduated?
Yeah. Um,
Oh,
I had a teacher in college who was very much into Japanese painting and philosophy. And he made us read books. Like this is a painting class, but he made us read books written by artists, Zen Buddhist artists, about art and how to paint without thinking. And this was a big thing about his approach to art. And that kind of spilled over into me, into my consciousness. And I started reading about Japanese art and Asian art, and I just developed an interest and read all these books. And then finally, I woke up one day and I said, you know what? I think I just got to go there. So
oh,
I I
that's
stopped
great.
I stopped going out. I started saving my money, and eventually I saved enough and got a one-way ticket to Japan, and ended up in Asia for almost 4 years. Three of those were in Japan.
So what
And
did those four
sorry,
years?
what's
What
that?
what did you do those 4 years? That's a wow.
Um, I spent about 1 year in total traveling. So I went to Southeast Asia, I
Okay.
went to Korea, I went to um, Hong Kong, I went to Thailand, Myanmar, Philippines, Taiwan, of course, all over Japan. And then I got a job in Japan. I was totally broke. I arrived in tropical clothes in the wintertime in Japan with $300, the classic tale. And I managed to get a job teaching in a coffee shop. It was where people would come in, Japanese people would come in, and they just want to practice their English. So they
Right.
just sort of talk to you, and that was my introduction to teaching English in Japan. Eventually, and I didn't have a proper visa, so I was working illegally. And I was always, every time there was a knock on my door, I thought it was the authorities and I was going to get chucked out or something. But eventually I got a visa and then I got a job in a real school. And then I taught English there for almost 3 years. And so I'd mostly taught at night, but during the day I would do my art and I would go to the galleries. I mean, Tokyo is amazing. Great galleries, great museums.
Wow.
And I just went and kind of studied, not formally, but studied on my own, just looking at, I find you learn more from looking at paintings than you do from a classroom in
Yeah.
most cases. So
Yes.
I just, and some of that kind of bled into the way I worked. And so that was a big influence on my work, especially when I was young.
Yeah.
And eventually I just decided to come back to Canada and here I am. That was, I think I came back in 1988. So I've been in Vancouver since then, since
Yeah.
88.
Yeah. So you've changed your style over the years, or you think you're doing similar, or you just, kind of
Yeah.
just moved along and developed it more?
Yeah. I came back. It's kind of weird, but I wasn't a big fan of abstract painting when I was young.
Oh,
But I
wow.
went to Japan and I watched these calligraphers. Uh, we think of calligraphy as working with a tiny little pen on a piece of paper, but in Japan, the
Those
Buddhist
large,
monks, they have these huge, they're
yeah,
like brooms, almost like
yes,
mops,
they are.
and they dip it in the ink and they kind of meditate for a little while, and then they paint these huge characters, these Japanese characters in black ink on white paper rolled out on the floor, and they
Exactly.
walk backwards, and it's almost like a dance, and they move the brush back and forth, and they paint these beautiful characters, and they let the paint drip and slop, and it's all done in a very controlled way. But I suddenly thought, okay, that's so cool. I love the way they work, and it takes them decades to learn how to do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the actual painting only takes, a few seconds or minutes, but it takes them decades to learn to paint like that. And then suddenly, people like Franz Klein and Jackson Pollock and all the American abstract expressionists, what they were doing kind of clicked for me. And as I say, I wasn't really that interested in abstract painting, but it gave me fresh eyes to look at people like Klein and de Kooning and Pollock and all the great New York painters of
A
the
lot of them
40s.
were trained classically, with art.
Yeah,
They chose to go that way.
absolutely. So it gave me a lot more respect for that way of working. So I eventually, when I came back to Canada, I started doing these black and white abstract paintings, and and then eventually I introduced more and more color into it, and so I was off on an abstract tangent for a long time, probably about 20 years, and then a very strange thing happened to me. A guy, a drunk guy in my studio. I had this open studio event, which I do every year. And this guy had had quite a few drinks. And he said to me, I really like coming to your shows. I love your work, but it always looks the same. And yeah, so initially I just dismissed him and I said, you don't know what you're talking about. But then I went home and I thought about it. And I thought, I've been doing this thing for 20 years, and to me, the changes every year are big, but to everybody else, they can't even see them, of course. I used a little bit of yellow for the first time or something like that. Nobody else notices stuff like that. So I, it kind of bothered me. It got under my skin a little bit, and I thought maybe it's time for me to do something different. Why not? What could possibly go wrong? Okay, so what? You paint a few bad paintings. You can always go back to what you were doing before. So I took a trip to Japan and I came back and I said, I'm going to paint Tokyo. So how am I going to paint Tokyo? Well, you can't really paint Tokyo with a bunch of black and white abstract shapes. So I'd started going back to representational work, and that was probably about 12 or 13 years ago. And so ever since then, I've been painting mostly representational work. So you can always tell what my work is now. It's a city or it's a street, or I did sort of landscape-based work. I've done figurative work, and I've done a variety of things since then. So that drunk guy in my studio kind of gave me a little boot in the rear end, and
Mhm.
and got me rolling the dice a little bit more and taking chances and taking risks and getting out of your comfort zone. And I think as a result of that kind of unexpected experience, it's really improved my work, and I think I'm a much more diverse artist now in my approach, and I'm not complacent, and I'm not stuck in one sort of way of working. So
Mhm.
in the long run, that was a good thing. So as much as everybody's a critic, and you got to stick with what's in your heart, you also have to you know, listen a little bit to what people have to say.
And you have to be, oh, I'm an artist too.
Yeah, I know.
Hobby. Yeah, I haven't. done my art in a long time. That's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I think as an artist, the thing I like, it makes you open to the possibilities and not stay in a box. You
Yeah, exactly.
me, I'm not. I have so many things I love and I do, but I think that helped you by you expanding and going into another area because I
Totally.
the combination of the representational that you do, but the abstracts there, but you can see what it is.
Yeah.
It's like it's magical. I
Thank
like
you.
that.
Thank you. Yeah, and maybe I couldn't have got where I am with the representational stuff without having done the abstract stuff first. So I think they've kind of bled into each other a bit and informed each other and inspired each other.
Oh, and what
So
I
kind of
mean,
an organic process, I guess.
kind of like the Zen monks.
I guess so. I wouldn't, those guys, they're in a different league from me in a lot of ways,
I'm
but
thinking more so when I look at your paintings and I think about that you have, like let's say with Tokyo, you probably knew you wanted to do Tokyo or a certain cityscape, but you got to really be able to think out of the box to be able to blend the abstract part of it. It doesn't take away from the representation, it adds to it, but it gives it a whole nother depth, in my
I
opinion.
think you've hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. I didn't want to just illustrate a Tokyo street. I
Yeah.
wanted to get the not how Tokyo looks, but how Tokyo feels. And
Yes.
and I don't if you just illustrate and try to get every little sign and every little car in the right place and all that, it becomes kind of a dull, stagnant kind of image, in my opinion. There's some realists who do some really amazing work, of course, and I have a lot of respect for realism, but it's just not for me. And I find that uh, I can capture the energy and the movement of Tokyo much better if I allow myself to be messy and sloppy and throw it around and chuck it and scrape it and for me painting's a very physical act, and so I'm up to my elbows in paint and it's all over me, and sometimes I get on the bus and I'm going home and then I get home and I got paint all over my hair and I didn't even know, so for me it's a very physical act, and I try to almost I tried that my body energy. I want that in the painting, and that way I hopefully am able to kind of get the feeling of New York and Tokyo and just all big cities in general. And so yeah, you're right. It's the combination of the abstract and the representational, all kind of almost clashing in the painting and creating that tension and energy in that. And that's what I hope to get in my paintings. I
Because
don't want a painting to just sit there on its rear end and not do anything.
well, when I
So,
looked at your cityscapes and I like, oh wow, it's like they're emotional. It's
yeah,
like
oh, totally.
it's like if you could abstractly show the energy of the city and all the different energy that's in the city, that's what I see your painting as.
Absolutely. And I think there's part of it is also,
Balance, though, it's not chaotic. It has a balance and an order to it, you know, even though it's not representational, if you understand what I'm saying.
I
To me,
do understand. I think also as you say, there's a lot of emotion that comes out of me. So there's kind of
oh,
all this external stimuli from the city. But at the same time, there's David Tycho pouring his guts out onto the painting too. So there's kind of a meeting of the internal and the external, and it all kind of happens in a battle almost on the canvas. And
but it
that's
doesn't
kind of the way I
appear
paint.
like a battle. It appears like random thoughts that are on there, but they have synchronicity. If you
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me,
that's a good way of describing it. Sort of
the
like ordered chaos or
colors, the
chaotic
the
order.
colors, but the coral is all balanced, even though they're
Yeah,
placed in different areas. Everything, the finished product to me is very balanced, but it allows you to see all the different, energy in that exists in a city,
yeah,
that cohabits in a city.
you got it. Well, I was trained sort of formally, so the ideas of balance and
Oh,
it does creep in. You kind of people think that, well, I'm painting from my raw emotion, but I had, 4 or 5 years of art training, and that becomes part of your repertoire, part of your
Okay.
palette, or, like I do understand color theory and all those kinds of things. So definitely those sort of aesthetic decisions, they happen very spontaneously, and that's why you
Liminal
learn them.
you, because if it didn't, another person could paint that and it would look chaotic. It would be like repelling. But to me, your cityscapes draw you in.
Yeah,
Really take a long look and
yeah.
absorb and kind of engage with the painting, if so to speak.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad that
Yeah.
they touch you and they make you feel something. That's the greatest compliment I could ever get. The worst compliment, or the worst, not compliment, the worst thing that anybody could say is nothing. You know, I don't care if they say it's terrible. I don't care if they say it's great. Uh, but if they say I don't get anything from it, that's the biggest insult. So I do my very best to make people feel something. And they may feel that this is a city, but it may also touch them on subconscious levels too. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that everybody has their own person. There's no wrong answer when it comes to what does this painting mean, or, everybody has the right answer. It's
Yeah.
whatever it means to you is what it means. And you're right. There is order and there's chaos, because cities are very ordered. You got to drive on the right-hand side of the road, otherwise you're going to have
But
a
it's a
head-on
lot of
collision.
stimulus
Yes,
in larger cities like a New York, a Chicago,
sure.
a Los
Yeah,
Angeles. There's all different levels between the noise and the smell
yeah,
and
yeah,
the even just the view of it. And all
absolutely.
somehow all mixes together. And that's what I was kind of picking up.
Yeah, well, that's what I try to include, all of those different sensory experiences, like as you say, the noise, the movement, the smell, um, the colors, the energy, the chaos, the beautiful chaos.
Yes. Yes.
That's that's what I love about New York and Tokyo and cities like that.
So when you prepared for your solo exhibition, well, how did you start? Did you look at pictures? Did you have something in mind, or did
Yeah, I
you?
usually start with pictures. Just so I have two cameras. I have my phone, of course, and I have my good camera. And if
Oh,
I have if I get my act together, then I'll take my good camera. So I have really good quality pictures, but I don't always have that. I have my phone, so everywhere I go, I just take pictures. I take pictures of people standing on the street corner. I take pictures of I ride public transport a lot, and so I take pictures out bus windows, and I take pictures of subway stations, and all of this. So I have thousands of pictures in kind of
your
files.
research that helps
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
You observe things. Oh,
Yes. Yeah. I sit there, I don't say a word, and I just stare at people. Then everybody moves to the next car on the train.
okay. But that's fascinating. So that then for me, being the observer of your work, that does you well because it comes out on the palette.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily just use one picture for one painting. I'll use
Exactly.
multiple pictures.
For
Sometimes I'll start with one picture just for the composition. And then once I get the composition down, then I'll chuck the picture and just let my imagination and memory run free and end up with something completely different. So I try to work things out on the canvas. I don't have it too planned out in advance because I want it to look spontaneous and fresh and like it just fell off the brush. And
hmm,
that's how I work. So I start with pictures or memories or both, and just after a certain period in the painting, I just say, okay, time to put away the picture, and just now it's time for David Tycho to do his thing. And I I like jazz music, and I listen to a lot of jazz music.
yeah,
So
me
when
too.
you have jazz musicians improvising, they have kind of an underlying structure that could be really simple, and they improvise on top of that simple structure. And that's kind of how I work. I have a basic
Well,
underlying composition or
Yeah.
structure, and then I improvise on top of that. And so I think the way of working is similar to the way improvisational musicians work.
Um, so for your exhibition that you have going on now, did you know you were going to make a certain amount of pieces, or you just said you go with it until you feel you're done?
Um, a little of both. I knew I paint constantly, so I just have so many, I have
Wow.
way more pieces that I can ever put in an exhibition or anything like that.
Oh, wow.
So I never have to worry about the numbers. It's just selecting the right ones for the exhibition. So
Okay.
I basically let his name is Ian Tan. He's the
Yes.
art dealer and the president and owner of the gallery where I had my recent show. I
Mhm.
let him basically pick most of the pieces, and we discussed a few of them, but most of the choices were his, and I was quite happy with his choices. If I wasn't happy, I would have told him and we would have discussed it more, but I
Yes.
was quite okay with his choices, and so sometimes that happens. We just seem to like the same pieces. Other times, I'm in a, we have a bit of an argument about which pieces to include. But I think he and I have a similar eye. And
Okay.
if I was left to pick all the paintings, I'm pretty sure nothing would sell.
Oh, man.
It seems
Man.
like the ones that I love the most are the ones that don't sell. So I'm a really bad,
Well, it's
he's
good that you have this relationship with Ian, man.
yeah, exactly. So he uh,
Oh my gosh.
he has to keep his doors open. This is one thing that people don't understand. Like I would love to make people cry with my paintings, but uh, commercial art galleries can't really do that. If everybody's crying, nobody's going to buy anything, and he's going to have to close his doors. So there has to be a bit of a compromise. I know artists hate to hear that and they hate to say that, but there are always compromises to some degree.
Yeah.
So he'll let me put in a few really edgy pieces if I'll let him put in a couple of pretty pieces. And so we worked it out. This one worked quite well. I think he has a pretty good eye, and there wasn't that much discussion actually. But I
So
have had battles in the past.
the pieces were really large. So are majority of your pieces, I love the size of them. Are majority of them large, or do you ever work on smaller pieces?
I do everything. My smallest size is about 12 inches by 16 inches.
Okay.
So pretty small. And I go right up to about 5 feet by 7 feet.
Yeah,
That's
I
about my
love those
largest.
large pieces.
I prefer painting large, but
Yeah.
if you paint nothing but large pieces, storage is a big problem. I mean, all these practical concerns that people don't really understand.
Studio's real large, though. It looks like it's pretty
It's
well.
huge, but I pay a king's ransom for it.
I can
It's
imagine. It's
really expensive.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. It took me years to get that studio, actually. Um, I first, when I first moved in, it was shared by there must have been 7 or 8 artists in that space,
Oh, wow.
all with little sort of sectioned off 100 square foot areas. And as each one left, I took over their space. And
Smart. I,
so eventually, I have this big giant space that I have now. But Vancouver is one of the I think it is the most expensive city in Canada,
wow.
especially for real estate. So it's just really hard to find cheap studio space. And mine is not cheap, but it's manageable.
Is it in a industrial building or?
Yes, the
Oh,
whole area is industrial,
smart.
and a development group bought it and turned it into studios, and it's become an icon in Vancouver. It's
Wow.
they're about oh geez, there's got to be at least 100 artists in the building,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
everything from tiny little cubbyhole size studios all the way up to mine, which is one of the biggest ones. But I've been doing this a long time. A lot of them are young, of course, and they're starting out. My first studio was my dining room, of course, and
Like most
so
artists.
that's where everybody starts, right? Or their kitchen, or somewhere, or a corner of the living room,
Yes.
whatever. I had a one-bedroom apartment, and much to my wife's dismay, our little tiny eating area was my studio. So uh, so everything smelled like turpentine because I was using oil paints back then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that's where everybody starts, and then slowly and hopefully surely you get the kind of space you want. So I've got that, and they're gonna have to fight me to the death to get it off me because there's no way I could ever find that space ever again in Vancouver. So
Oh wow. It
I'm
looks
fortunate, but it
just
took years,
the
that's to say.
pictures of it. I was like, I fell in love with it. I was like, wow,
Yeah, the
that's
building's well
heaven.
over 100 years old, which in Vancouver standards, that's pretty old. It's an old warehouse. I think it was a factory at one point. It takes up a whole city block. Um, and it was a factory, then it was a warehouse, and the trains go by there all the time. And they used to stop there and pick up cargo and stuff from this when it was a
Oh,
big warehouse. So
we
it
have
has quite a,
several places in Chicago like that that have artist lofts and stuff. I think they
yeah,
make great studios.
yeah.
Great
So we're not
studios.
allowed, no one's allowed to live in our building, and I think that's because of insurance. The
Right.
insurance would be much, much higher. So it's a workspace only. But I know some people are living there.
But you have access 24 hours.
Yeah,
Oh, well,
yeah.
yeah.
It's
People probably stay late.
the owners have done a good job with security and
Yes.
it, it
That's
is kind of a seedy area. There's kind of that's the only area of town where you can afford the space. So
yeah.
that just comes part of it. I know some of the women are a little nervous at night when they leave, but and I've been broken into a couple of times. Yeah,
I
it happens. Somebody
I had a
sneaks.
studio in a art center that was in an old building, and we had 24-hour access. So, because a lot of times, sometimes I wanted to paint real late at night.
Yeah,
It depends on what my mood was, but
yeah,
yeah,
sure.
when things
So
are quiet, because I used to study when I was in college at night because things are just, for me, still and quiet, and my mind is like racing and real productive.
yeah, yeah, you're a nighthawk, I guess.
Yes. I want to change subject a little bit. I want to talk
Okay.
about you have a passion, as I read, for the wilderness and forest and stuff like that. So talk to me about that because you've done a little bit of traveling.
Oh yeah, I did. Um, that was my. I was. Let me start over. I used to think that I had to go out into the wilderness and have a solitary experience
Uh,
and commune with nature. It sounds kind of corny, but
no,
that's
because
what I used to
I'm
do.
a
I used to pack
person.
up my tent and sleeping bag, and
Oh,
then I'd
that
drive off into
is
the wilderness in my beat up old Dodge, and I'd set up camp, and then I'd go for hikes, and I'd spend days and sometimes weeks out in the wilderness. And then I would come back to Vancouver and to my studio and try to use that to
energy.
inform my art. And I did that for years, and I spent a lot of time in the American Southwest, actually. I used to
Ooh,
drive down to Arizona
yeah.
and California, Death Valley, all that area, Nevada, Utah, the canyon lands, all that red rock, and it's just stunning scenery,
That
just
is.
absolutely stunning. And in some areas there's hardly any people in them.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so I used to go down there, especially in northern Nevada. There's hardly anybody. So, and it's that desert, dry climate. I'm from the West Coast, and it just pours with rain here all the time. So for
Oh,
me, it's quite exotic to go to the desert. And
oh, okay.
so that kind of landscape inspired abstract painting. That's when I started using oranges and reds in my painting, and I
Oh,
hadn't done that before. It's because of the rock, all that
it's
oxidized rock.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yes.
and especially at sunset and sunrise when you've got, a really warm orange sun glow, like the mountains and the hills and the
A
canyons.
lot of people go there for healing.
Yes,
I
exactly.
don't think it's odd for me because I'm a nature person.
Yeah.
Plants, this is in my office. I have a lot
Yes.
of plants in my house. And
Yeah.
I believe that when you go out in nature, even if you just go outside and take your sandals off and put your feet in the grass, it helps calm you, relax you, and it helps keeps you balanced. I believe
Yes, absolutely.
symbiotic relationships. So I understand it. I don't think
Yeah.
I still do it. So,
Good. So do I, but not as much as I used to. I'm getting older too. It's getting harder to crawl in and out of a tent.
oh, I can't do the tent thing though. I'll let you have the tent. No,
Okay, yeah.
here.
Well, I had hip problems and getting it, like I have a little tiny tent, like a backpacker's tent. So
Oh, wow.
you got to get down on your hands and knees and get inside it. So
I have no problem taking a camper. I
yeah,
don't have to sleep out in the tent. I
yeah,
admire you, tent people.
yeah. Well, then you got the bugs and all that. So it's
Yes, I
never that
do
comfortable.
like to
But
just visit nature and be out in nature because I do think it helps clear your mind and it's a Zen thing and it really
totally.
does help.
Yeah, and it's a nice contrast to the city, and I love the city,
Yeah,
and but I also love the wilderness, and so I like both, and I like them both
yeah,
for different reasons,
yeah,
and nothing wrong with that.
exactly. Yeah, because it's a lot of stimulus and it's a lot of stimulus in the city. And I
Yeah,
think because I love plants and I'm really into them and I love animals too, it keeps me balanced and not with the craziness.
yes,
A lot of
absolutely.
people
You need
are
your
just nuts. And I'm like, and I live close to Lake Michigan, which
yeah,
is like being in California with the ocean. So I
yeah,
think the water and all of that just really makes a difference.
yeah, yeah. It's your solitude, your quiet solitude, and where you find your center,
Exactly.
and so you're ready to take on the world the next day again.
It explains again, it gets back to your paintings. It explains a lot to me.
Yeah, that informed. I did a whole, like probably 5 or 10 years of landscape inspired abstract paintings. And
Yeah,
so the wilderness inspired a lot of that.
yeah.
But then I woke up one day and I said, this was a radical change for me. And I said, you can't keep driving down to Arizona every time you want a moment. So what's wrong with looking out your window and painting your own world? And I started doing paintings of Vancouver, of the city.
Why
And
didn't you go to the Yukon?
that's a little, I don't like cold weather. That's why I go to the desert.
Yes.
I when I head off of my car, it just automatically goes south. It never goes north. Yeah. No, I have been up in north. I've
Canada.
worked up
I'm
near
gonna
Alaska
say,
actually,
okay.
and
Oh,
I have
wow,
been up
really?
there, and it's beautiful. It's stunning.
It's
But
beautiful and when it's warm, but I couldn't take their winters, that dark
no,
all the time and
no,
uh-uh.
not a chance.
No,
So
no.
I go up there June, July, August, maybe
Yes,
September, and
beautiful.
the rest of the time they can have it.
They could, yeah, I totally agree. I asked about the Yukon because I did oh, it's got to be 4 or 5 years ago. I did a magazine on the Yukon artist, some artists up there. So that's why I was
Hmm.
curious because
Oh,
they're,
they're going to be mad at me, but it's no, it's stunning. It's
yeah,
stunningly beautiful up there, and
yes,
they have these enormous mountains. Like you've heard of Mount McKinley in Alaska. Well, that's in the same range. It goes into the Yukon. So those mountains are almost 20,000 feet high, and
yeah. And those people want to live there because I have a friend and she introduced me because she had did something in the Yukon before. She introduced me to these artists. And there were artists that came from the United States that end up staying there. They fell so in love with it. You'd have to love it to stay up there, but
yes, you do.
all the artists are just absolutely outstanding.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
think
fascinating.
it's a special breed, that's for sure.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Is there
And
anything?
they can have it. And I don't mean that in any sort of
No,
disrespect.
they can't. I love
I'm a warm weather guy. I live in the
even though
warmest
I live
city
in
in Canada.
Chicago. I'm the same way. I
Yeah,
prefer warmer weather.
yeah,
Climate change is doing well by Chicago because it's warming up a lot,
yeah. Same with Vancouver.
which is not good though,
Yeah,
but it is warming up a lot.
helping my old bones a little bit.
So, David, where do you see yourself in the next year or so? Do you think you're going to venture off into another area, or are you comfortable right now exploring?
I've got some new ideas in mind, in the back of my mind, so I'll probably explore them. I also do digital art,
I saw that.
so this is something new for me. During COVID, I was kind of housebound a little bit for a while. My wife works in healthcare, or she used to work in healthcare, and so I had to be very, very careful in the beginning that I didn't get infected and infect her. So I stayed pretty close to home
Um,
because in her job, it could be life and death for some of the patients.
yeah,
So So I stuck pretty close to home for a few months anyway, and that's when I started working on digital work because I I play guitar, but I'm terrible, and I got tired of that pretty fast. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to fill my days? So I have a computer full of images, full of photographs and photographs of my paintings. So I started digitally combining photographs of my paintings with photographs of cities and started
Oh,
making these kind
wow.
of collaged images.
That's what
And that
your
sent me
mixed
off on a
medium
new,
is about, right?
sorry?
Is that what your mixed medium is about?
Yes, exactly.
I
So it's
like those.
digital mixed media.
Yes.
So it's all done on a computer, but it's based on photographs that I've taken. And then once I combine a few images, a few photos, then I start using paint tools like digital paint tools and digital coloring tools. So I learned a whole new way of working. And eventually, after I figured out what I was doing, I went to a printer and he said, "Oh, they're not good enough. You can't print these." And so I thought, "Oh no, I did all this work." So I had to go back and start over, and I had to learn about pixels. How
Oh,
many
yeah.
pixels? Oh man, and I knew nothing about that. So I had to start all over, and that's when I started using my proper good camera. And and every time you crop an image and then crop and crop and crop, you're losing pixels, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
and then the print quality would be terrible. So I had to learn to try to save pixels. Don't give away those pixels unless you absolutely have to. Um,
I learned that
that's what
from
my mother told me.
developing my
Don't
magazine.
give away those pixels unless you absolutely have to.
I learned that doing my magazine, and I'm into graphic design. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, you know all about that. Yeah.
but yeah, it does make a difference.
Yeah. If you want a clean edge, you've got to have those pixels.
Have you tried doing anything with AI art?
Not yet. I'm still learning traditional digital media.
Okay.
So I've I have mixed feelings about it, but I'm really ignorant about it. So,
I interviewed an artist. His name is Christopher Schuler Brandt, and
mhm.
he's classically trained artist, but he started playing with AI art, and it's not as easy as people think.
No,
You
you gotta,
really
it's a
have
tool and you have to learn how to use a tool.
exactly.
Everybody
You
thinks you're
have
gonna
to
press one
really
button and everything's gonna be amazing.
no,
That doesn't
no.
happen.
I mean, for one image that he wants, it may take 300 different photo tries of working with the software to get it to the colors and everything. I was like,
Yeah.
wow. But his work is it's fabulous. It is outstanding. It looks like
I'll have
some
to have a look. He must be on,
yeah, his
did you feature
magazine.
him in one of your magazine?
He was in the magazine. He was in the
Yeah,
magazine.
I'll Google him or I'll look for him.
Yeah, do because his stuff looks like something that would be in a sci-fi movie. It's
Okay.
good. He recently had a company in Dubai to have him do some illustrations for their a commercial. He's
Hmm.
to me he's like in the forefront of what I've seen so far in that, but yet I am going to be interviewing a professor who's an architectural design that does AR art that's just it's just wow. So they're talented because you just couldn't do this by yourself and tell a computer to do it.
That's what I've heard. I have a friend who knows all. My son works in technology too, and he
uh,
um, told me that it's the same with Photoshop. People
I
thought,
use
oh, you
Photoshop.
just press a button and suddenly you have this amazing
No,
image. No,
no, you
not
have
at
to play
all.
with it.
There are tools, but one button tools on phones and stuff like that. But
No, for Photoshop, I use it.
no,
You have to know what you're doing.
yeah. So there's a learning curve, and
Exactly.
there's so many tools on Photoshop. It's overwhelming, of course. And I was scared to death when I first started. I didn't know what I was
Really?
doing, and yeah,
I
it was
taught
so new and
myself
different.
all of this.
What's that?
I'm really good with software, so I taught myself everything.
Yeah,
I like to play
I,
with stuff, so I'm kind of
and
a
we hate people like you
oh,
because I'm terrible at it, and every
oh,
little bit that I learn, I'm just so unintuitive. Like, uh,
but they
I
have
gotta,
videos that'll show you.
yeah, I know, but I have a short attention span, I think.
Oh no, you
My
don't.
eyes start glaze as soon as the language gets a little technical. My eyes glaze over, and I go into a coma.
You don't have a short attention span because I bet you when you're in that studio, you lose track of time.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Rose,
I
because when I paint, I lose track of time.
Yeah, me too. Hours go by and you think it's been 20 minutes and it's 4 hours. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Exactly.
that's true. I have a good attention span for things that I love doing, like eating and making art.
Okay, those are two things.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I got.
Well,
That's
thank you so much, David, for allowing.
Thank you, Renee, for having me. It's been a
I,
pleasure meeting you and
I love.
getting to know you and looking at your magazine. You do an amazing job.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I'm just really impressed with your whole life story. I've Googled you and read a little bit about
Oh,
you, and I just think that your career changes and your different directions are just wonderful. You're
thank you.
embracing life and you're embracing challenges and changes,
Yes,
and I
yes.
think that's just amazing. And I'm just really fortunate. I'm fortunate that we've crossed paths online and finally got to have a little bit of a get to know each other session.